Hello, hello. You're tuned into this week's episode of the Steam Deck Podcast, Flip Screen Games Weekly Podcast, all about Valve's portable PC powerhouse and other things. I'm your host, Steve Rafford, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Pete and Bessie.
I'm back, baby. I would
And
be remiss to not call out that you said you're very good friend and co-host. So you and me
Yeah,
are very good friends.
that's good friends. And then the other guy, Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, ahoy.
Jury's out on Max.
Screw you both, but ahoy, ahoy.
Oh, we love you, really.
Thanks.
We're all back for a very good reason. Christmas came early this week, and Valve released or announced 3 pieces of hardware, which I think was a bit of a surprise. I know we kind of knew about the VR headset and the controller, but the Steam Machine was a big surprise for me. Like, what was our gut reactions on the announcement? And then we can dig deep into what they announced.
Immediate reaction was, I can't believe how many of these things we've been talking about for the entire 3 years we've been doing this show, and how sort of obviously this is none of our work, but how spot on so much of these little things that have been talked about and brought up over the last couple of years, even so much down to the Steam Machine having a built-in controller. I'm jumping ahead here, and then the LED on it. It's that's the stuff that was in the video we spoke about, where they had the leaked prototype all those months ago. It's all here. So yeah, first I was just amazed.
So there was a couple weeks ago where I feel like it was on this show, and Max, you were like, how much of the stuff that we've have we ever had a really major prediction come true, pitch perfect? And that was my first thought. I was like, yeah, we fucking nailed it, man. I mean, come on, we got it all right. I remember Steve even being like, oh yeah, maybe this thing is a set-top box, and kind of the primary onus behind designing it is that it connects to the VR headset, and it's a power, it powers that, but then also you could just use it as just a console alternative, a set-top kind of box. And yeah, I mean, the truth is somewhere between those things, but it's honestly, it's pretty cool, man. I mean, I think this is feeling like we are getting closer and closer to, I think, the ideal realization of the Steam ecosystem that we've been talking about for a while now, right? Of you have your Steam Deck for on-the-go gaming, you have your Steam Machine as a TV device, and then you've got your rig for classic PC gaming, right? And then obviously we got this VR headset that is, I guess we'll see what the long-term impact of a device like that is. I think that's a little more open for debate, but we can get into that when we get to that section.
Yeah, so all 3 of these things that we're going to speak about, they are launching in 2026. We don't know the prices. We don't know if they're going to launch at the same time, but they have said it's all launching in early 2026. I'm going to guess that the first thing that we're going to see is probably the controller. So we've been asking for a Steam controller 2, a replacement for the original Steam controller that came out alongside Steam Machines so many years ago, and they finally brought it for us. It's got the full deck controller experience. They've got all the back grip buttons on it, everything that we have come to love and expect from the Steam Deck, but they've also added a bunch of other stuff here. They've got what they described as next-gen magnetic joysticks. It uses something called TMR, or tunnel magnetoresistance. Apparently, it's very similar to Hall effect, but it uses smaller magnets. It's a little bit more precise. And those sticks have the capacitive touch sensors on them in the same way that the Steam Deck does, but they've also added sensors to the back grips. They're calling it GripSense. It's very similar to the index controllers and how they can detect your fingers. And you can use those in the same way you can use the capacitive sticks to do anything in Steam Input. You can activate a new layer, you can activate gyro controls, things like that. They showed in the announcement videos putting the pinky on there. If you really want to get that precise, you can just put your pinky on there and it can activate gyro, for example. They're saying it's got 35 hours of battery life. It's got the HD tactile feedback and rumble, which I think is the same deal as the The Steam Deck, it probably works within those trackpads, and that's where the feedback and rumble comes from. It doesn't have like a traditional motor, and it's got this interesting wireless magnetic puck, which is a 2.4 gigahertz wireless dongle, and you just magnetically charge on it. It looks really cool. But you can also use Bluetooth and USB if you want to, and it'll work with any device that will run Steam. Pete, what was your gut reaction on the Steam controller? Because I know you have used your Steam Deck docked quite a lot, and I think you use a DualSense at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, usually for whatever reason, I seem to have trouble with the Xbox controller syncing properly. Like, I've had a lot of issues when I have tried to use an Xbox controller with my Steam Deck, and for whatever reason, the DualSense, it just plays a little bit nicer for me. So that's usually my go-to. That obviously has some limitations, right? Like, I think that the Steam Deck controller is obviously so useful for certain types of games that like don't really lend themselves to using a controller interface, like with the touchpads and stuff like that. And I don't know, I'm kind of two minds with it. I think this is obviously really cool. Like, this is something we've been looking for a long time. I do think it looks a little bulky. It looks like it might not be the most comfortable thing to hold.
Right, let's flash back to when the Steam Deck was announced, and you said the exact same thing.
Totally right. And it wasn't until I had my hands on it, and it was very ergonomically designed. So, jury's out on that one, that part for sure. But I do think that, like, I think it's a really, like, it seems as compact as they could get it, right? Without sacrificing having the full-size trackpads on, because those are really, really beefy. I think the dongle of it all, I think, is really cool. Like, I think that's a really elegant solution to charging and syncing and like kind of having that like immediate like plug and play kind of solution. I really like that. And I do think that like the gyro stuff seems pretty interesting as well. Like, I think that seems like really nice functionality. I know that's something that you take a lot of advantage of when you're playing on Steam Deck, Steve, is like being able to like use gyro to aim in games that don't support gyro.
You can like activate it in the same way with a DualSense. Like, I had it in games where I would pull down L2 with the DualSense, and then gyro could activate. Gyro. But it's so nice to just have those capacitive sticks, or we can have that like grip sense here, where when you've got your finger on the right stick, which is your looking stick, that's when I want gyro activated, and I can have that like precise movement. I really like that. I'm glad that that's here. Yeah. And I'm glad they kept the trackpads, because I think that opens up a world of possibilities for games that you just can't play otherwise. I'm thinking things like Age of Empires, for example, that might not have like a console adaptation of the game. There's so many like layouts that use it, and you can have it just segment to a screen. I mean, Max, you were talking about on last week's show, which might actually be next week's show if we've not put it out yet, about playing DS emulation and how the trackpads open that up. Like, well, what do you think of this? Is this something that you would use, like docked on the TV?
Absolutely. I mean, I play so much Steam Deck, or so much PC stuff docked to the TV, but when I'm playing on the Steam Deck and I have a certain control scheme set out, I hate playing on the TV and feeling like I'm missing something. I feel like I can't do certain things or activate certain things, or I'm having to sort of like remember what the buttons are away, because I'm like, oh, I always press this button for that. Oh, it's actually this button, So to be able to do that, and I think what I spoke about last week was also reopening up like Wii U emulation, where you need a second screen, or you need to be able to swap between two screens, but you have to sacrifice a button to be able to do that, and then also somehow interact with this to what would be a touchscreen on the Wii U. So the Steam controller being able to just like hold down R4 to bring up the what would be the Wii U screen, use the touchpad to sort of move to what I want to do, push it into click, like it just feels like it's going to be seamless. And I think it had to be that because of the SteamOS experience in a docked desktop mode. I can zip around Steam, the desktop mode in SteamOS so quickly with the Steam controller. The Steam Deck controller. But as soon as I have to use an Xbox controller, I can't do that. So I think it's just going to make it so much easier to, without having to fanny around unplugging stuff, I can just let me just pop into desktop mode, change this thing, download this thing, you can use the touchpads to get each half of the keyboard as well, so you can input things a lot quicker.
Oh
than
yeah, I
you
forgot
can with
about
the
that.
normal
Yeah, that's
stick.
so much nicer with the two thumbs. Yeah.
I think
It's just
like
going to be lovely.
having the ability to like have something that is permanently connected and like exists for just this purpose will be nice too, because to your point, Steve, like, and granted you could do this with an existing controller if you're not switching it between devices or anything like that, but something like this where it is going to be just what I use for my Steam ecosystem devices, like, is something that is interesting to me. I think whether or not I see it being a main controller for me is gonna probably come down to those ergonomics and how comfortable it is to hold. And also I think like, there's some questions for me about placement. Like I don't really know that there's a layout other than this that would be possible to get everything in there, but it's like the sticks are a little high, they're a little close to the other buttons and the pads, and like those are things that like they might feel totally fine, they might feel a little awkward.
If you compare, I'm looking at the picture of the Steam controller sat next to the Steam Deck that's on the new hardware page they've got in Steam. And I'm looking at the placement of the sticks, the placement of the buttons, the placement of the sort of the plus and minus buttons. And it feels like if I imagine holding the Steam Deck in my hand, I always find that to be everything just sort of sits comfortably where it needs to fit. Like if I play on the Switch 2 or the Switch now, that right stick seems too low. It's never quite as comfortable as having the sticks up there. So I think that the sort of the height of the controller, the way they've sort of pushed everything up, I feel like in my head, ergonomically, it's going to feel like holding the Steam Deck, but just closer together.
To an extent, the like sticks are slightly lower. Like on the Steam Deck, they're kind of almost in line, like they're almost in parallel with the D-pad and the buttons. And this is slightly down. I do like the kind of trackpad slightly offset at like a 30
at a
degree
slight
angle.
I think that's smart.
And also slightly angled, like curved away, like tilted away from you, so that your thumbs are sort of like pushing down on it, as opposed to
Yeah, I think that's going to be great, and I'm interested to see if any of us use these trackpads for gaming in non PC games, right? Because like I don't know about you, but for the most part, if I'm playing like an FPS or something, I'm not using those. I'm using the sticks, and I'm only going for those trackpads. And granted, they're kind of tucked down out of the way. They're in a very similar position to where they would be on the Steam Deck. But I mostly use those for navigating around desktop mode, if I'm honest.
I think that's true for me, but I also sometimes use them, like I program them sometimes. Like you can program.
Oh, it's just like extra buttons.
Yeah, like you can set up like key mappings and stuff like that. If they're each segment of it can be programmed, so you can program like up on it, center on it, down on it, left, right. So I'll use that a lot for certain games. If there's like a game where there's like, I don't know, like some advanced combination, or if there's like a button placement I don't like, to a point that you made earlier, Max, like there's certain times in like emulation and stuff like that where that might be useful. I've set up like up on the touchpad for like to load a save state, or to like make a quick save or whatever. So there's a lot of like small functionality like that I could see you getting out of them, but I guess that also begs the question of like, how many programmable buttons do you need on this thing? Because it does have at least 2 or 4 back buttons, and then
it's got the 4 back buttons, which I usually use those in placement of. So the way I always program it is I hate pushing down on sticks for running, so I'll always have the like R5 button as running, and then if I was playing something like Hitman, it would be annoying to have to like go into like the Hitman sense or whatever they call it with the bumper buttons, so I'd program that as one of those as well. But those, I always use those back buttons for controls I use frequently. But like you, Pete, when I'm saying maybe playing something like, if I'm streaming Chiaki and I'm playing something from my PlayStation or whatever, and I want to do a function that the software does that I'm not necessarily doing frequently, something like quick save in like an emulation or something, I want to save the state, having those like extra buttons on the D-pad is really useful to be able to just like quickly click and it does something.
Especially in a situation like that where like if you're just keeping with the emulator example, where like if you otherwise want to activate those things, you need to like swipe down at the top of the screen and like click like it becomes very like I'm on a PC, and it's like that's not what we're trying to do here, right?
Or you have to remember what combination of select and what button
Yeah,
opens
yeah.
up the right kind of menu on like the emulation thing.
Yeah,
I think,
exactly. Like
the-
I think those are things I could definitely see being
Yeah.
useful even if you're not getting a lot of mileage out of the trackpads. I will say before we get too far away from it, I really like the redesign on the back buttons. Like I like that they're actually like buttons instead of like the kind of like long rectangular strips that we have on deck. Because I don't know if this is a thing that y'all ever experience, but like I've had times where I feel like those buttons are not as sensitive as I want them to be. Like it takes a little.
They require a lot of click, especially the one with the pinky.
Right.
That requires a lot of clicking.
Yeah, and to me, that's why I've never ever used those like as much as I'd like to, or even the way that you described, Steve, where it's like, oh, I'd rather press that back button because my finger's already there rather than like hit either of the bumpers or something like that. And to me, it just feels so unnatural because not only are they like harder buttons to press in, these are the two fingers on my hands that have the least button dexterity, right? Because like I'm a controller guy primarily, right, more than I am like mouse and keyboard. So even with mouse and keyboard, right, like on my left hand, these buttons are used to, these fingers are used to pressing buttons, right? But not so much on my right. So like having something that is like a more defined small circular button that will take less effort to press, I think I'll have a lot more reason to use those buttons as alternatives.
I wonder how much of that is down to real estate, because I know that on the Steam Deck, like me with my quite small hands, I click them on the inside, whereas other people that have larger hands might click them at the back more, like to have that. More,
I have kind of long
because it's
fingers, which is like I think part of why
yeah.
that is like it's a little uncomfortable for me because I'm not really hitting it where it wants me to hit it. I'm hitting it in like the center of the rectangle.
Whereas for me, I'm pulling it in, but even then, I might have to shift my grip to really get the good push on it. Whereas
Right.
these do feel like when I was playing Donkey Kong Bonanza on the Switch, to be able to sort of put the jump button on there, so that I wasn't having to come off of the control stick. It was just really nice to be able to have that easy to press button. And this looks like the same sort of thing of like it's easy to press, not quite as flush, which is nice because you might be able to feel it easier than on like the Switch ones.
Yeah, I think you're
Have you
probably right.
used a Switch 2 Pro controller before? I don't know if either of you would have done.
Only on a test unit.
Oh, okay.
So I've not like played a significant amount of time with it.
So they're much more flush. I think the track pads for me as well. I think it's just sometimes it's nice to just be able to pull up a mouse out of nowhere. Like it's just nice to. Oh,
that's brilliant.
Get on this
Like,
thing.
yeah.
Oh, I can just have more fine-tuned control.
Even when you're playing like old PC games, right? And some of them have those launchers that you need to click through in order to like boot the game. Like I was playing Oblivion, for example, and that game on PC does not support controller very well. You're better off emulating the Xbox version of that game. And just being able to go through the menus at launch, or if say you downloaded something from Battle.net, playing
Right.
Diablo and getting through that and being able to launch it, it just makes things so much simpler.
It would be nice too that if you're like in a situation where you need to launch your console into PC mode, that you could like navigate it very easily in desktop mode, just using the controller you already have connected across the room, and not like let me go grab a mouse and plug it in, and
which is the main purpose I keep my Steam controller around for currently. Not to mention it was the only way that you could boot the Steam Deck remotely for a long time until they introduced like the Wacom Bluetooth. So that's nice. There's a couple of things I do want to clarify from the specs. They do have some haptic motors in the grips on this that aren't obviously on the Steam Deck. And interestingly, each Steam Puck can support up to 4 controllers. So you can connect 4 controllers to each device via a single Steam Puck.
really.
Yeah.
Which is odd because surely the puck comes with each controller, right? So I guess it just makes
We don't know. We don't know if it does, because
I believe we know that the box comes with one puck and one controller, right?
Yes, but you can also get the controller in combo with a Steam machine, and that I don't think comes with the puck because the connection interface is already built into the Steam machine.
And
so
that does take 4.
You may have like multiple controllers lying around without pucks.
Sure.
I could have sworn that it comes with one, but
It does when you get the controller separately, but I don't know that the Steam machine comes with a puck. I think that just comes with
The Steam machine just comes with it. It's built in, which is it's one of the things that the sort of prototype one we talked about had in native Steam controller can support.
But before we move on from this, I'm curious as to a couple of things. What do we think on price for this? Like, is this what are you guys willing to pay for it? Because I think for me, I'm expecting it to be around $80 to $100.
I was thinking 70, 80.
Yeah, and I'm willing to pay that. I think for
yeah.
a
I think that's the standard for controllers at this point, right? I mean, the Xbox, modern Xbox controller, the DualSense, and the Switch 2 controller all are $80, aren't they?
So
Or no,
I think my series
70, and then the
controller
Switch 2
costs
is
like
80, maybe.
Yeah,
I think sorry, I was going to say my series controller cost me like 40, but my Switch 2 controller did cost me like 75.
the series controller is different because it doesn't come with the battery pack. You can put AA's in, so you have to buy that chargeable battery separately if you want to, which I think adds another 15 or 20 onto the price. So when you start doing that, it sort of works out to be a similar cost. But I'm curious as to whether they're going to pitch this as more of a premium controller, like the DualSense Pro.
The Switch 2 controller is actually $90 in the United States.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so that's curious. I'm also curious because this controller has features that we don't have on the deck, and obviously as part of this hardware announcement, we've not spoken about the Steam Deck at all. Do we expect them to do a refresh, bringing in this TMR stuff, bringing in the actual vibration motors, bringing in the grip sense, or do we think that they're just gonna wait for maybe Steam Deck 2?
Yeah, I don't see them backporting support to this kind of stuff unless it's like very easy to do so. If it is just like a software based thing, then why not, right? Like, but I think if you're talking about most of this stuff, that sounds like stuff that you save for a hardware revision.
But do you think we get like just a, I don't know, Steam Deck 2026? It's the same one, but we've added on magnetic sticks. We've maybe revised the back buttons a little bit to better match, added grip sense in.
Maybe it's so tough with how they've talked about the Steam Deck 2 in the past. Like there was an interview with them with IGN like talking about this, and they kind of reiterated that idea that like we don't want to keep doing these like 30% incremental updates where the battery's a little better and this is a little better and that's a little better. Like we really want to have that more substantial like second, phase, wave, whatever kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it just feels to me like, I don't know, could we see another like midpoint console? Sure, but I think at this point, like, we got the OLED, which was kind of that mid-gen refresh, and given the fact that they've on multiple occasions said that like that's not really how they want to handle updating the thing, just doesn't seem like that makes a lot of sense to me.
I think that the Steam machine, which we'll get to in a bit, I think adds a little bit of extra longevity to the existing deck if you consider it like the brains of the device that you then like stream from, like a PS Portal, for example. So maybe like, obviously it's not quite the same as having a Steam Deck 2, but if you are feeling like your existing Steam Deck is aging and you're going to get one of these things, the Steam machine, you could in theory just like use Steam Link or the built-in Steam Link and try and sort of eke some extra life out of it. But I see what you mean about like the newer hardware things. I think it would be nice, but I don't think it's worth it for them to try and create another SKU that like people like us are then going to be like, oh, I feel like if we'd just waited, we would have got this. Like like people might have felt about the OLED.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in their quote, they said, we're not interested in getting to a point where it's a 20, 30, or even 50% performance at the same battery. We want something with a little bit more demarcated.
Well, yeah, but I kind of feel like you could not do the performance increase. You could reduce the footprint, redesign it somewhat, keep it the same thing, maybe reduce the price a little bit. I think there's something they could do there, but I think if we were going to see that, we would have seen it here. And I think they're probably waiting for 2027 for Steam Deck 2 at this rate, because it really feels like we would have seen the Steam Deck 2 as part of this announcement, because they seem to wanted to do all of their hardware announcing at the exact same time. And why would you not talk about the most popular device you've ever made if you're going to announce all these other things?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that... I don't know. I can see that argument, but I do think they're a little different, because I feel like these three things are in pretty serious conversation with one another. Like, granted, the frame like obviously can work on its own. It's like it doesn't need a Steam machine, but it does seem like, that to me feels like the controller, the box, and the headset as like a line of things that you announce at the same time. Like, makes sense to me. Whereas like I feel like if you announce the Steam Deck 2 at the same time, I think that maybe muddies the water even a little bit, just because the Steam Deck is such a known quantity, and it feels like that would kind of suck all the oxygen out of the room for these other devices that are a little bit, you know, more unproven, right? Like I think obviously the last round of Steam machines were kind of a famous failure, and I think even this device, there's some questions about, you know, its overall functionality, how well it's going to be able to compare with PCs of a similar price, whether or not it's going to go pound for pound with Xbox and PlayStation in the way that you want, right? I've read some hands-on stuff already from folks who've had early access to it, and it does seem like higher-end games run pretty well, but there are like hiccups and, you know, some tinkering and stuff like that you need to do with it that obviously isn't the case if you're playing on a PlayStation or an Xbox. So I think there is going to be the question of kind of like, you know, is this a device that has really, really heavy adoption and it's a game changer, a disruptive force? Is it this? Is it that? Or is it a really, really niche device that exists for certain types of Steam Deck users or certain type of PC users that, like us, like want that kind of third pillar represented in the way that they interact with the Steam ecosystem? Mm-hmm. And I don't think that we really can know that, or even what Valve's expectations are for it, until it comes to market and we can really get into more of those nitty-gritty comparisons, because, you know, the Steam Deck was a niche product, right, that sold really well at launch and has continued to sell really well and established a, you know, core dedicated user base.
Well, it's also opened up a whole new kind of device, really. These handheld PCs were around, but they weren't really console focused. They were just running Windows. You know, we had like the GPD Wins of the world, but there wasn't anything really that was
as well.
They were really expensive, and I think that's what's really going to make or break this console. I'm going to call it a console. I know it's a PC, but it very much is being pitched as their console.
Right.
I think it's going to come down to price, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But obviously, they have announced it. We know it's a really, really cool looking 6-inch cube with this beautiful LED strip on the front that you can like customize. I love that. Absolutely love the fact that can be used for like showing progress, like on your download, so you can just look over and see, oh, my game's done. Like I can play it, which is amazing. Users, they've again partnered with AMD. They've got a semi-custom AMD Zen 4 CPU. It's got 6 cores, 12 threads, with multi-threading, up to 4.8 gigahertz, 30 watt TDP. I was surprised it was only 30 watt TDP. I thought we'd have seen them maybe pushing that a little bit more. Again, semi-custom GPU, runs RDNA 3. I think the Steam Deck's RDNA 2. If I'm not mistaken.
So, yeah. And then the new RDNA. It's a shame it's not RDNA 4, because that would mean like FSR 4 would be out, which, while it is nicer, isn't really as supported. So I can understand why they haven't, you know, why they've gone with an RDNA 3 card.
Fixed clock speed at 2.45 gigahertz, so not adopting what, say, PlayStation's doing, which has a floating clock speed, 110 watt TDP, so similar to a mobile RX 7600. The real controversy comes, I think, on the RAM front. We've got 16 gigs of dedicated DDR5 RAM, and only 8 gigs of DDR5 VRAM. So the VRAM poses a slight issue for 4K potential. You can't really load 4K assets into 8 gigs of RAM. It's just not possible. So
correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't this doesn't promise true 4K, right? Isn't it all upscaling?
So they've said it can run 4K, but really it's going to be doing that and achieving that through FSR 4. It's going to have to, because you cannot load 4K assets at speed into that little RAM. You'd have needed at minimum probably 12 gigs. Probably 16 would be a better option for 4K gaming. But I think most people aren't going to notice the difference with FSR, and really, with DLSS, most people are probably playing at 1080p and then using DLSS to boost it up. And FSR has really come along leaps and bounds. FSR 4 is great. You could use XeSS as well here if you wanted to. The same options exist in the same way, because it's running SteamOS. You can just take your pick. Two options at launch: 512 gigs and 2 terabytes SSDs, which I think for me is the biggest indicator that they're making one of these to a price, and they're probably looking to be quite aggressive on the price, because that's a big jump from 512 to 2 terabytes.
Right? Yeah, that seems odd.
One's at a price, and I would not be surprised if that 512 one does not come with the controller either. So like we want this to be like $499, and it's 512 gigs with no controller, or you can buy the 2 terabyte model, and maybe that comes with another customizable faceplate and also comes with the controller. But it does allow you to swap that drive out really easily. We saw in the video that you can just swap out the storage. It comes with a 2230 NVMe, which is the same size as in the Steam Deck. It's like the half size, but you can put a full size 2280 in there if you wanted to at any time. And supports micro SD, not micro SD Express, which I was also surprised to see that they didn't adopt. I thought we would have seen that.
I do understand why though, because of them being sort of you being able to just pop one out, put it straight in the Steam Deck, and then just basically swap your library between the two.
Yeah.
If it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure micro SD and micro SD Express aren't
Compatible, yeah.
in that
They
way.
are not, no.
They're like a different.
You can read a micro SD card in a micro SD Express slot, but you can't do the inverse.
Right. Yeah. So I see why they've not downgraded, because I'll be honest, I run all of my Steam Deck games off of my micro SD card because I use my main sort of SSD for all the emulation crap that I can't bother to move around and mess around
Now,
with.
running at 720p, I don't see that posing a problem. It's when you're cranking up to loading in and streaming 1080p or 4K assets that potentially that's going to show some like slowdown, loading between scenes, larger loading speeds just to boot up the game. I think that's where you could potentially see some issues. But I think the fact that you can easily access, you don't have to take the thing apart in order to do it. It's like a bay on the bottom and you just swap out the drive. I think if you want to buy the cheaper model and you have like a 2280 SSD lying around, maybe you had one in the PS5 and you want to swap it in, and you can do that. It's super easy. There's no issues. And you just reinstall SteamOS and away you go. I can imagine a lot of people will do that at launch before they even turn the thing on. They'll just upgrade the SSD straight away.
Yeah.
I think the being able to hot swap your library is really nice. Like, it just feels like another like nice extension of the kind of like dream Steam ecosystem we've talked about. Like, it would be really chill to be in a scenario where it's like, oh yeah, I've been playing this on my Steam machine at home, and I'm about to go away for a weekend or whatever, and I just pop it out and put it in my Steam Deck and just keep the party rolling. That sounds really nice.
You don't have to then like it's a big game. You don't have to like clog up your Steam Deck with it, because it's something you usually play on the TV. But actually, maybe I do want to quickly just swap it out and like, or just to be able to have your library exist across like multiple SD cards and then just pop, like swap them around and you know.
Yeah, it's really cool. There. And as we said, it supports up to 4 Steam controllers on the machine. It has the built-in dongle, which again makes me think that the controller that's bundled with this console or with the Steam machine doesn't come with the dongle because it's built into the actual Steam machine, so you don't need it. I guess the only thing would be you'd miss out on the nice magnetic charging, so maybe they'll sell that separately. But yeah, you can buy it with a controller or without. So I'd imagine that cheaper model's not going to have the controller. Will be my guess that they're trying to meet a price for that, which is fine because you don't need the controller. We've seen with the Steam Deck that you can just use any controller. So if you've already got one you like playing with the DualSense, you can buy this, add it on piecemeal later if you wanted to, or if you've already bought the controller and you want to buy the machine after, you can do. Some cool features though. I really like it. I love the swappable faceplates. I really hope they release that like wood effect one that they had in the video. It was so cool.
It reminds me of that like Atari
the 2600
set-top box from a couple years ago. Yeah, that was like aping the OG wood plating. Is like, it's pretty cool.
And all of the, is it Fractal Design, I think, do all of the wood plated PC cases that are really nice.
Yeah, that's nice.
I was looking at making for my PC, like printing the bits that stick on the front of there's like a grate. I was like, if I just got some nice wood, got some nice oil on it, and then just 3D printed the 4 balls that you need to slot it in, like have a nice wood front PC case, like that would look real nice.
Yeah. It's a little interesting that they have said that it's like you can, it's made for third parties and stuff, and it's like it's not clear if they have plans to release them, but obviously like in the like promotional footage there's a bunch of different ones. It's like,
isn't that people have sort of looked at one of them and sort of theorized that a lot of the stuff is hinting towards Half-Life 3, which I know we've heard a lot about this week, about There's going to be like another announcement from Valve next week about Half-Life 3. There's been 3 new pieces of kit come out.
Well,
Yada, yada, yada.
they also spoke about wanting to get Half-Life Alyx working standalone on the Steam frame. So I could see that maybe there's an announcement about that, and maybe there's like something that comes alongside that, which I could see. I mean, yeah, it's a very interesting device. Like apparently it's whisper quiet, which when you see the teardown of the thing, the majority of the size to this is the
that
heatsink,
fucking
and
huge heatsink. Yeah.
and a ginormous fan. Like it's absolutely huge, which is the same thing that Xbox did with the Series X design, and it's been proven to work. Like it is a one huge fan at the top, and it is whisper quiet. You don't hear that thing from the side,
Yeah.
other side of
It
the
is
room.
it is really funny to me that it's like 5 years removed from the Series X, and we were just like, man, they just made a weird giant like obelisk tower, and like the Steam Machine is like, what if half? Like,
Yeah, I love it.
It's just a cube. It's a little GameCube. I love it.
This aesthetic for me, like I don't know what it is. It's like minimalist. It really reminds me of like the Next Cube from the 80s. Like when, you know, Steve Jobs got booted out of Apple, he went and made a ginormous metal cube that the internet was invented on. It's so cool. I love the lights. I love the style of it. There's something about just a black box that I want that speaks to me more than say the monstrosity that the PlayStation 5 is. Like this is just, I could see it sitting nicely next to
You don't want your
my
console
TV.
to look like a spaceship?
No, I don't. Or like a modem from 2012. It looks terrible to play PS5. It's awful. But yeah, the inside's super interesting. I think it's really cool. One other thing I wanted to point out is they're saying that FreeSync is supported on HDMI 2.0. If that proves to be the case, then hallelujah, because I've still not managed to get FreeSync to work on my Steam Deck through the dock. It's been like 3 years since I bought that dock, and still doesn't work. And I think it's probably only ever going to work on DisplayPort for the Steam Deck.
Yeah, maybe that's a Steam Deck 2 thing.
Yeah, I think it probably will be. But are you guys excited about this device? Like, is this going to be a purchase for you, or is it going to depend on the price? Do you think?
I don't think those questions are mutually exclusive. I am interested in it. Whether or not it's a cop, for me, definitely comes down to price. Because I think there's a lot of like intrigue to a device like this. You know, I think one of the things that they highlight in the promotional material is like what a good device this is for streaming, and I could definitely see that being like something that gets a lot of people into the Steam ecosystem, you know, like people who maybe only got into it with Steam Deck, right, and would like to have a companion device for it. I think that seems like a really interesting, attractive option.
I could see my dad swapping his Steam Deck out for this, because like he really only plays that thing docked. Like he bought it so he could play like PC games on the TV,
Right.
and like get cheaper games on Steam sales, that kind of thing. And this is more powerful. It's going to be able to play the games, probably more stable. It's a fixed device. You don't have to worry about the screen resolution changing when you dock and undock.
This plus the controller as well sort of completes that whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing I keep coming back to, right? Like I think for me right now, like I've been playing games on my desktop a little bit this last month for the first time in a while, and it's been like fun kind of getting back into like actually doing things on my rig. But there are certain types of experiences and certain games that like you just want to play on the TV. And like, you know, could I unplug my PC and bring it into a different room and plug it in and go through all those steps and plug a controller into it if I wanted to do that? Yeah, I could, but I'm not going to. You know, it just isn't going to happen. So, like, a device like this is something I've wanted to have in my ecosystem for a while now. And the big, like, you know, thing that's kind of kept me off from it, because we've talked about, like, if all of us want this, why don't we just buy one of those really, like, high-powered mini PCs, right, that are, like, no frills but have, like, a good ceiling and can play, you know, high-taxing, like, AAA games, right? And ultimately, it's, like, there is, like, a clear market out there for that kind of device. But I think the reason this feels more attractive to me is because of that promise of like Steam support, right? And like how much
they've proven that with the deck. Like they've proven that they continually update it, have continued to push it. And you're in that ecosystem, you get the nice to haves, like you're running SteamOS, you have to deal with Windows. You're going to get the shader pre-cache downloads.
right.
Someone's already compiled the shaders for you on their Steam machine. It's been uploaded to Valve servers, and you're pulling them down, so you don't have to do any of that work. There's less stutter. I think a big thing though for me is they still haven't figured out that anti-cheat, and depending on the price on this, that rules out some games that you won't even be able to play. Like if this is the device that you're looking at and being like, well, I don't need a PS5, I don't need an Xbox anymore because I can buy all of their games on Steam, I can play them. Well, some of those won't be playable because they still don't support BattlEye.
Right.
There's still those issues. GTA 6, which I may or may not ever come out of this rate, may not be playable on this.
At least not online. You know, like
which is a big draw for a lot of people.
Yeah, might be fine. But yeah, of course. And that is, I think, the question here, right? Is like price is part of it, and then also is like what are the caveats? And I don't want to speculate too wildly about the caveats because to the point you made earlier, when they announced the Steam Deck, I had criticisms and questions and was thinking about how the Steam Machine situation went and like, are you going to be able to make a device that appeals to enough people? Are you going to be able to do this, that, and the other thing? And not to say that those aren't legitimate questions, but I'm not as concerned about them in a world where I have the Steam Deck and I've been a Steam Deck enjoyer for 5 years now, right? And it's like that device just works more often than not, right? Are there certain things you want to do with it that are going to require like, you know, a tinkering? Sure. Are there certain things that, you know, it doesn't do as well as you might want it to? Sure. But 9 times out of 10, it's a more plug and play experience than it isn't. And the tinkering stuff is like pretty easy to figure out because there's such a dedicated community. I think if this box hits that same benchmark of like, you know, yeah, like it is effectively a viable alternative to the PlayStation or the Xbox. And like, if you're not pressed about waiting 12 to 18 months to play the next big PlayStation game, that you could realistically like replace either of those or both of those devices with this one, that's, I think, a bigger question that then we can answer just by looking at specs, because a lot of that is going to come down to like performance and support from the community to come up with the right key bindings or the right settings or what have you. But there's every reason to believe that same groundswell of interest will appear around this device as it did around the Steam Deck. I think the big question I have is this device is more analogous to a standard PC, right? Whereas the advantage of the Steam Deck is that it's a form factor that you can't replicate with a regular computer. And
to some extent, yeah, but there are very few PCs that I'd want by the side of my TV and I would use as a dedicated box. Like if I'm building one, it's probably going to be bulkier, it's probably going to sit on desk, it's probably going to be plugged into a monitor. I think the biggest issue and concern I have here, aside from price, which we've seen Steve from Gamers Nexus saying Valve has told him it's entry-level PC pricing. Linus Tech Tips has said Valve told him it's PC price, not console price.
So what do you think that means? $700-800 more?
Well, I'm looking at like the price of a PS5 Pro is like $799. I could see them trying to hit that. I can imagine they're probably going to try and go even lower. I think that's why that 512 gig model exists. I'm guessing $599 is the price that this gets announced.
That seems really competitive.
It seems like that's more. I think it'll be more than the Steam Deck, but it won't be as much as like a PS5 Pro. I don't think, just because Valve sort of needs to convince people to get this over just building a PC. And granted, building a PC doesn't offer the same benefits as this, but
you get a lot of other benefits though, because the longevity on this is my other main concern, right? It's I buy this. Right. I can't upgrade it. Well, I can if I build a PC in there. The PC might cost me like $1,100 up front, but then if I want to upgrade the graphics card next year or the RAM next year, I can do that. I can't do that with this box, and we might end up in the same issue we've got with the Steam Deck currently, which is in 4 years' time, games might be coming out. We might be looking at the PS6 and the whatever the next Xbox is, and they can play new games running the next version of Unreal Engine 6, and we don't we won't be able to play them on this. And at that point, it's I've got to get rid of this box. I've got to get another one.
Yeah, and that's where I think the price is going to be like the most important thing here is like if the price is anything, too crazy, I think that is going to be a turnoff, right? Like if it's close to $1,000, you end up in that question of like, well, why wouldn't I just build myself a PC then, right? And maintain that instead. And I think that's a potentially a legitimate question. And I think that's going to be like the differentiator here. I think if it's closer to that $600-$700, even $800 range, if it lasts for 5 years, that's not that different than the life cycle of a console. And I think if people think about it that way and they're comfortable thinking about it that way, then that's fine. But yeah, if it's something that like where it's within a $200-$300 range of you could spend that much more and have a rig that will last you longer, that's upgradable, that is inherently a more versatile device, even though it's bigger and clunkier and yada, yada, yada. That's where I think it gets more questionable because this is a device I could really see falling in love with and becoming like a primary place I play games on the TV instead of using either of the big two console manufacturers. And if I have to spend like $200 to $300 more on this device and I have to tinker with it to make things work and it's not able to play every AAA game that I want and I have to upgrade it every few years, that's where it becomes, I think, like it death by 1,000 cuts, right? Mm-hmm. It has too many little things going against it to make it a worthwhile investment for somebody that's maybe already in those ecosystems or what have you. That doesn't.
It does have the like perk of being a completely open system. You don't have to buy through Steam. You can go get games from the Epic Game Store or Battle.net. You could install all your emulators on it, which you're never going to be able to do on an Xbox or a PlayStation. Nope. So it comes with those perks as well, and it's trade-offs. For you that might not be the right trade-off. For someone else who really loves playing emulated games or really wants to be able to just download from wherever they want, that might be the right trade-off.
Or again, like if there's somebody who primarily plays their games on a high-quality rig and they just need a device that is capable of being the in-between for those things of like, yeah, when I go and sit in my living room, I want to keep playing my Steam library and not have to,
Which is Max, right? And I'm curious as to whether Max even sees a point in this machine for his setup because you use Moonlight to stream everything.
Yeah, now apologies if I say something that Pete's already said here, but you guys have been dropping out quite a lot for me, which is why I've been quite quiet. So sorry if I repeat anything. So I think that this device is perfect for the kind of person we've said before about who maybe just wants an under TV PC, who is a console gamer first and foremost that wants to make a jump into PC gaming. I don't think it's the PC gamers jump into console gaming, if that makes sense. Have I got that the way around? I think I've got that the way around. Yeah. But for me personally, I don't see the value in that because if I'm playing those games on my TV downstairs, I would want to be able to take full advantage of my TV. I'd want to be able to do like 4K 60 without having to sort of do too much FSR or I want to know that the game that I'm playing is going to work, which is why I like streaming from the PC down to my TV using the Steam Deck, because I know that it doesn't actually have to do anything other than talk to my PC, which I know it works on, So my big question is how the Steam controller is going to interact with Moonlight and Sunshine, because is it going to be able to send all the right, all of the Steam input stuff through? Is it going to be able to send the trackpads through? All of these sort of, I've got a lot of these questions, but yeah, this Steam machine, well, I think it is going to be a wicked piece of kit, and I think it is going to revolutionize the sort of like, just the under TV PC, because you'll be able to use it if you're emulating machine. You'll be able to use it, maybe even do something like host media for you. So if you just want to like hop on and watch something, with the touchpad of being able to control it on the TV so easily, could you very easily find a movie somewhere that's not necessarily legal, or maybe it's a file you have on a local disk or something. How easy is it? You can be able going to be for you to be able to watch things on different websites that maybe it's harder to do on a browser, on a console. Yeah, I think it's going to do a lot of that. And I think I heard you guys saying something like, what did I say? That the longevity of it is a worry.
Yeah.
And I do agree with that. And I think that's why I still prefer using the PC as like this thing is going to go for until and if it doesn't go, I just swap a part out. Whereas the Steam Deck has already sort of like hit its life for AAA games now, and is being extended by other means. Whereas if the Steam machine starts to show its age, there's no option other than to connect it to something else or replace it with whatever the next
which
generation
is, to be fair, no different to any other console. Like the PlayStation and the Xbox also hits their life and you replace it with the next one.
Yes.
The concern here is this is being released midway through a generation, and it seems to be on par in terms of power with what you could expect out of the PS5 or an Xbox Series X.
And I think the problem with that comparison there too is the price, right? Because it's like that's like I think part of the of what you pay for with a console, right? Is like it is, a plug and play solution. It's simpler. It's this and that. It's also a lot cheaper, right? Like
it's not really though, like anymore with the Series X costing, the 2 terabyte version $799 now in the US. So it's like when it gets up to $799 for that version or the standard version $649, if they can hit that same price point, it kind of is.
So
and then you get the games cheaper as well.
That is the bigger thing. The games are cheaper. I think the thing that like this is a thing I feel like a lot of PC gamers do when they're making the comparison price wise between console and PC though, which is like charitable in favor of PC gaming. It operates under the assumption that you already have a rig, right? Or like you're not going from the ground up, because if you're going from the ground up, it's not remotely comparable in price, and I think you're being disingenuous if you say that it is, because $800, right, as the most high-end price point for a console, fair enough. You're not buying a high-end PC rig for $800 all in, right?
No, but I'm saying the Steam machine, right, which is comparable in terms of power with the Series X. Like if they meet that same price point, like does this then have more legs there?
I think that really depends on the user is the thing though, right? Because if you're somebody who's already deeply entrenched in the Steam ecosystem and you have a ton of games that are going to play right out the gate, and you're going to buy new AAA games a few months after they come out on sale in the Steam ecosystem where it's going to be a better deal, that adds up over time. And I think for a lot of players, that is a difference maker. I think you made 2 points, and I feel like the one thing I'm saying is rebuttaling both of them, so I'm going to go A-B here. So on the price point, right, like say it is 1-to-1, like if it costs $800, the same as like the PS5 Pro or those other high-end devices, yeah, like that I think does represent a better value than those devices. But you could easily buy one of the other options that's $200 to $300 cheaper. And that is not no money, right? Like if you're somebody that is looking for a more like budget-friendly solution, $200 to $300 is quite a bit of money, in terms of like a differentiator between choosing between two pieces of hardware.
And if you're coming from consoles, you've probably got the library there, which I think is a big thing as well. Like if you've been a PlayStation player for decades, you're probably going to continue to buy PlayStations because your library's there. I think Xbox is maybe,
to your point,
slightly different. I think you might have just had Game Pass for the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think this is a way like if you were going to put a gun to my head and say, which would you rather have for $800, an Xbox or this looks more attractive. I think the PlayStation of it all is like, if you've been in that ecosystem for 2 generations already, making the shift, like those are different questions. But again, I don't think that it precludes one or the other. It's just like, are you the very specific person that exists in this Venn diagram, or is this device attractive enough that it is attractive to people outside of very specific use cases, which I think is the bigger question here.
I think it probably is attractive enough for people, and I
think it is if it's, especially if it's at a more competitive price, like you suggested. If it's like $600, $650, that's a really interesting, compelling device. If it's $800 plus, that's where I think you run into the more difficult question. Because I think something that Max brought up which we've talked around a couple times, but I think is probably worth zeroing in on, is like the specs here in relation to AAA games, right? Because like it's not exactly a like beast, right? Like it's more comparable to the existing consoles on the market. It's those are consoles that are already old. So to your point, for this to be coming out about halfway or more, right? Probably closer to 70%.
Well, I think we're looking at 2028 for the PS6, right? So you're going to have 2 years of life in the console in the Steam machine by the time it comes out, before the PS6 comes out. But that's assuming that we're going to get, high quality titles in the first year or two of the PlayStation 6, which we didn't with the PS5. It wasn't really until the last couple of years that we started getting the Unreal Engine 5 games that have really put a strain on the Steam Deck. So I could see that posing an issue further down the line. I mean, FSR 4 is going to be coming. I know it only supports FSR 3.1 currently on RDNA 3, but Digital Foundry did get a hold of a leaked version of FSR 4 drivers for RDNA 3 that they did a video on in a comparison. It's incredible. It's on par, and it seems to be in line with NVIDIA's DLSS, which I think could be a big game changer here, because that is something that this would have on the consoles currently.
Yeah.
They don't have any kind of hardware scaling like that. They don't really do anything. I know PlayStation 5 Pro has the PSSS, the super sampling or
PSSR.
super resolution. PSSR has that. It's not on the base PlayStation 5. And I don't really know how well adopted that's been by developers either. It might just be at the hardware level that it kind of does that on the output, but it's not like at a driver level in the same way that FSR 4 is.
So something I want to bring in just before we move on from performance and stuff, and again, this is all early days. These are pre-release units. Nothing I'm saying here is to criticize the device or anything like that. I'm just trying to have the conversation, because I will say I'm interested in this thing. But in IGN's pre-release hands-on that they published this week, there were 2 games that they were able to test during they were at an event held by Valve. So it's like a controlled environment and a limited amount of games that you can test, and also there's not like an ability to sit there and tinker as much as you would if you were at home. So grain of salt for this stuff, but I think it's worth bringing up based on Max's question about like the longevity of this device and how many years into its life cycle will you start to feel limited by its performance and the fact that you can't upgrade it. So I'm going to read a little bit from IGN's article here. This is by Jacqueline Thomas was who got to do the hands-on and wrote this up. So despite the modest specs, the Steam Machine seems to be a capable gaming PC. I played Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K with the Ultra preset and FSR to set to performance, and the action stayed nice and smooth. I even went into the settings menu and turned on ray tracing, and performance seemed to stay solid, though I didn't have a frame counter up telling me exactly what kind of frame rate I was getting. So from that sounds pretty good. Granted, Cyberpunk is a 5-year-old game, right? So a 5-year-old game on max settings is, maybe not the most impressive benchmark, but that's also a game that had an update not that long ago. It is often used as a tech benchmark. So context worthwhile there. It's like,
really cool to see ray tracing though.
That's awesome.
Hardware ray tracing, which we do not have access to really on deck.
No. And is spotty on console, right? So it's like, that does seem like an area where it's potentially edging out the devices that we're trying to compare it to. Now this was the other thing I wanted to pull in. Things were slightly different with Silent Hill F, which came out earlier this year, right? So that's like a brand new AAA game. After a lengthy process of installing shaders, something every game seems to need to do these days, it defaulted to ultra settings at 4K with TSR instead of AMD's FSR. At these settings, Silent Hill struggled, chugging along at what seemed like 15 to 20 FPS, not exactly what I'd call playable. After adjusting the settings down to medium at 440p with FSR enabled, things felt much better, and this just highlights that the Steam Machine is still a gaming PC at the end of the day, for better or worse. Tweaking settings to optimize performance is a time-honored tradition among PC gamers, but again, might be less appealing to people who just want a plug-and-play gaming experience.
Silent Hill F is an Unreal Engine 5 game, I wonder how much of these issues are going to be the same we have with the Steam Deck and Unreal Engine 5, where you have to compile these shaders, you have to sit and watch them happen, and
I think there's ways that can be improved though, and I do think that the shader caching downloads are going to help that. Obviously, once the Steam machine's out, that's more people are going to be playing more games. The shaders are going to be uploaded. You'll be able to download them alongside the game. It should make that kind of open up a lot quicker.
There's also the fact that, like we've seen with the Steam Deck, that as the Steam Deck became a more popular device, people targeted the Steam Deck's specific.
I mean, there is that
benchmarks.
Something like Cyberpunk, for example, got the Steam Deck profile in settings, and you can pop that on, and it works perfectly.
So if this device has a similar level of success, and there's a similar level of like enthusiasm around it, that could be the difference maker, right? That like developers will just make an optimized Steam machine version of it, and that'll make the difference, right? And it won't be, oh yeah, like by default it's going into all these settings that don't make sense for this device or are not representative of what it's capable of, versus like, here's a version that's been made to a T to run on this thing, and for the vast majority of gamers, they won't notice the things that you're missing out on, because this is supposed to be a more console style 1080 upscaled to 4K experience, which that's fine, right? Like if it can do that at a somewhat competitive price, I could easily see myself making the switch over to this device as an alternative.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. It really comes down to, does this machine play the games I want to play? And I think realistically right now, I think it will, and I think it will for a good period of time, probably for the next 4 years. I mean, Digital Foundry is very optimistic. They're saying that this needs to be at $399 for people to even consider this, or it's going to be something that potentially doesn't look good against the current gen consoles, because on specs the current consoles will win. But I think there's just something special about having an open platform, about having access to Steam.
If it's that competitive of a price point, then it's like a game changer, right? Because then even if it has limitations,
Series S, it's like, oh, yeah, cool.
Even if it has limitations, it's like, who cares, right? If it's relatively on par with current gen consoles and it costs $100 less, and the games are cheaper, and you can run emulators on it, and you can play, it's like, then it's like, oh shit, okay,
Yeah, I just struggle to see how that works with the price of PC parts right now. Chips have gone through the roof. Like I just see there's no way they can hit $399. I think realistically $599 is where I'm landing.
I don't see this being 6 times more powerful than the Steam Deck and also cheaper than it. I think it's going to be more expensive than the Steam Deck.
And the top level Steam Deck, correct me if I'm wrong, that's $649, right? So
something like that, yeah.
I think $699. This is more expensive for the base model with 512 with no controller. $699.
I guess
you upgrade to 2 terabytes. You add the controller on. You tackle those things you need.
To push back on that a little bit, I think you're right, Max. But it is like, I guess, worth considering. Like, this is a thing we've brought up in the past, talking about what a pricing of a device like this could look like. It's possible that they take a little on the chin, like they did with the Steam Deck, right? Like Gabe Newell famously said it was like painful to get to the price point of the Steam Deck, because like you're not really making money on the Steam Deck, you're making money on people buying the Steam Deck and then buying a bunch of games in the Steam ecosystem. With a similar approach, that could offset the cost a little bit. And it is worth pointing out that when you're comparing the price of the Steam Deck, there are a lot of things in the Steam Deck that don't necessarily need to be in a Steam machine. And if you're right that it doesn't come with a controller, it doesn't come with those optional add-ons that you can buy a la carte, maybe there is a way that you make a way more competitively priced version of this thing that just doesn't have anything packed in with it and is like no frills. You have it, and it comes with a power supply, and that's it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think it'll be, and it's one of those small figure 8 cables. We don't need a 45-watt power supply with USB-C power delivery. We don't need an OLED screen. We don't need a lithium-ion battery. Those things will cost money, and they can shave down the cost there. But there's significantly more RAM here. There's a discrete GPU instead of an APU. It's not one chip here, so we've got 2 things doing their own thing. So I kind of agree with Max. I do think this is going to be more expensive than the Steam Deck, but they can hit that point because it doesn't have a screen. You know, it can be cheaper than, say, a gaming laptop because it doesn't have the screen, it doesn't have the keyboard, it doesn't have the mouse. You know, you can cut down on things there. The only thing that goes against Valve here versus, say, the big three is economies of scale. You know, they'll probably be happy if they sold 1 million of these in a year versus PlayStation wants to sell 10, 100 million. You know, it's very different.
Right.
And it really just is what they are benchmarking their success with this machine on.
Yeah, and I think that that's another really important angle to this is like if they're happy for this to be a, you know, I think it's not dissimilar from the conversation we had about the, what's that thing called? The PlayStation Portal, right? Where it's like that came out and there was like a kind of resounding like, who is this for? And well, it's a niche device for a very, very specific kind of user, and they were happy with how many people in that small Venn diagram purchased it, right? And if that's the aim for this thing, then, you know, yeah, the metrics for success are going to be very, very different than something more competitive. But I think the reason that I'm so inclined to discuss it this way is I think it has the potential to be more than that and to be something that is potentially, you know, like at least for Xbox, something that could really, really threaten. You know, they just talked about how the next Xbox is going to be kind of a hybrid console PC
and very premium. You know, they're saying
a higher
it's
price.
Probably going to be the higher price. It's probably going to be $1,000.
And so, I think the idea, like if you're comparing this or maybe even this thing's successor to that, is like, yeah, I mean, I'd rather be in the Steam ecosystem than the Xbox ecosystem. That's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's talk about you know, devices that potentially cater to a very small demographic. But speaking of niche devices, Max hated the Steam Frame so much he's not here for the conversation because he just, you know, clearly doesn't give a toss about VR. No, his internet dropped out, but we're going to press on without him. So the Deckard is real. We've heard about it for ages. We saw the smoke. There is definitely 100% fire here. It's a wireless standalone VR headset like we knew it was. There's a few things that we didn't know about, specifically the resolution in each size 4K between 72 to 144 hertz refresh rating. There's foveated streaming, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit because I'm very impressed that they've managed to pull that off. Dual speakers per ear, camera tracking instead of external tracking with the beacons, which some people are happy about. Some people are worried that it doesn't give you whole room tracking like you had previously. USB adapter with dual radios for smooth connection. As uses, I think it's 7 gigahertz. So great in room. Nothing else runs on the 7 gigahertz band, so nothing's going to interrupt it. You can play your Steam VR games, or you can play flat 2D games as if they were like AR glasses, and you can put them on.
That's a nice little like extra functionality. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really cool that, and the Steam controller pairs with this, but it does come with 2 new wireless controllers. They look very similar to the Oculus controllers or the Quest controllers.
Yeah.
It comes with the TMR thumbsticks. It's got the same grips that you had on the Index, so where it can sense your hands, that kind of thing, which you need for something like Half-Life Alyx. But this runs SteamOS on an ARM64 processor, specifically a Snapdragon 8, 16 gigs of RAM, either 256 gigs or 1 terabyte storage options. And obviously you can connect this to your PC if you want to play games there. But this answers the question that we had many months ago, Pete. If you remember, we were talking about Valve testing on ARM and whether they wanted to, whether they were launching on Android or if they were launching on SteamOS. Looks like they were launching on SteamOS. It's similar to Meta. Is running on Meta runs Android. This runs SteamOS, but is running on ARM. But Valve has said the Steam Frame can use the same Android APKs developers already use to bring apps from VR-based headsets.
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of both.
Quest.
Like it's
Yeah, well, SteamOS is not Android and needs to use its Proton compatibility layer to run the games. ARM code will run on ARM processor without needing translation first. So it sort of runs through Proton in order to play the games here. They've put the work in order to do that, but it seems like any developer who's already published a game on the Quest Store should be able to just automatically upload their game to Steam and it will work.
That's pretty cool.
So it's really cool. Like, again, Proton is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, which is really cool. But Before we get into any of the nitty gritty, what do you think of this device? I know you're not a big VR guy.
Yeah, and not because I am a hater of it. I just don't believe it has a lot of. Here's the thing: we are, a year away, right, from it being 10 years of this generation of consumer VR, and I just don't think it's borne fruit the way that we thought it might. I think that there was a time when the kind of first generation of VR. And again, I say first generation. There were VR devices that were consumer grade as early as the 80s. Like there have been VR, but I'm talking about this generation of VR, right? Like that started in the 2010s. And I think there was a time where we thought that it was going to be a real big game changer, that it was going to be like a whole new way to play in terms of like you have 2D games, you have 3D games, and you have VR games, right? And it just hasn't proven itself in that way. And you've seen a lot of the studios that work on VR games either pivot away from VR or go under or get acquired by
Meta snaps
by
up
Meta.
a lot. Yeah.
So I think it's a hostile environment for VR at the very least, right? I think it is a time right now where 10 years of VR have not proven it to be an essential piece of tech as like an enthusiast gamer. Like it's kind of another level of enthusiasm and niche to be a VR person, which is cool. Not hating on it. There are a lot of really fun VR games, and if you are somebody that vibes with VR, I'm not trying to put that down or say that like you don't matter, that there aren't people out there like you, but it's not proven itself as a mass consumer technology. And I think that when you consider that coupled with the fact that Meta has a real stranglehold on many of the big developers that still make VR games, so a lot of games will be exclusive to Meta or at least come there first, right? Doesn't help. And
they've kind of backpedaled on that a lot, which I was surprised to see. Like
on exclusivity, you mean? Or
they released a lot of their games on the PSVR 2, for example.
Right.
And Beat Saber's still available everywhere. There are games that were exclusive to the Quest, but as the Quest has been floundering and they've not really done much with it, they've kind of opened up those studios to release them elsewhere.
So, that's helpful for sure. I think the other, key thing here though is we're in a tough time economically, right? A lot of people are feeling inflation really heavily right now, especially if you're an American right now. Things are leaner than they have been over the last 10 years. And I think the fact, or not even the fact, the idea that there is a large activated base of people that are interested in VR and ready to plunk down, upwards of $1,000 or something like that on a device that has a pretty limited use cases. I just think...
I wonder what the price is on this, because I kind of am again thinking this is like a $599 device, but again, it's such a huge jump between it's such a huge jump between the storage options. Even more so, it's 256 gigabytes or a terabyte. It's like an absolute astronomical difference. And like the Quest 3 comes in pretty cheap. I know this is 4K, uses pancake lenses instead of the Fresnel lenses, that kind of thing. I think there is a world where this is like $599, and I mean
that helps a lot if that's the case. That's a much easier price point to swallow, but it's still a lot of money. It
is a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But if, say, for example, you're not bothered about getting the Steam machine, you've already got that you've got your PC rig, and you're just looking for something that plays. I kind of feel like, again, this comes down to what is the metric of success for Valve. They can get away with just selling 500,000 of these, and for them, they're selling games. If those 500,000 people, say like 20% of them convert and buy Half-Life Alyx, they've made more money, right? And they can keep selling games on Steam, and like that again is something that needs to be considered versus PlayStation.
Definitely.
They're a consumer electronics company at heart. Sony is a consumer electronics company. They want to make money on the devices, but also make money on the games. And I think that's been the big problem for the PSVR 2. Is no one was interested in what they had to sell.
Yeah, but how is
have that?
I don't know. You're right. This is a way bigger library of games, so that already is less of a concern for sure. Yeah, I don't know. You You would think though, right, that like I don't know. It's tough to say because I feel like the last couple of years it does feel like it's tough to make space for yourself as a VR device if you're not Oculus. You know, if you're not, or I'm sorry, Meta.
I mean, the Index has a very
Quest.
big following. Like, people love the Index. They loved the
Sure.
room scale. They loved, you know, a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, but it's like this has compromises on some of those things. I just don't know. It's tough to say. I will say something that I think is really cool about it. I really do like that it has the that they're like kind of prominently showing part of the value of it being like you using it as a monitor, basically, right?
Yeah.
And like somebody sitting in their backyard just like playing games. I could see that. I could see that being a thing that maybe you take advantage of, like in the same way that we talked about the value of being able to like hot swap your library between your Steam Deck and your Steam machine is like if you decide that like, oh, I'm going on vacation for a few days and I'm going to bring my headset so that I don't have to like worry about bringing a screen or plugging into a shitty TV or whatever, right? Like that's interesting. It has a lot of cool functionality. I think it is probably the most attractive VR headset for my money in quite
Mine
some
too,
time,
because
maybe all
it has
time.
access to the Steam library, and you know they're saying they want to make Half-Life Alyx a standalone experience on it. At the moment,
Right.
it won't run. It just isn't running on the device, but they want to bring that over. And I would imagine the next Half-Life or whatever they do in terms of VR space runs on this natively. I'd
Sure.
imagine we'll probably see a lot of stuff here. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I guess it just comes to the question that, like, even if you have that, even if you have Alyx going natively, if you have an Alyx 2 or a sequel to that or whatever, is one or two really cool killer apps enough to push people to buy, even if it's cheap, even if it's $300, $400, $500. Like, I just don't know that the desire for a new VR headset is really that hungry. But to your point, there are the Valve diehards, there are Index supporters that like maybe this becomes the new de facto headset for PC gamers.
which is what I think they want.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of the Index was kind of long abandoned and far behind in terms of software updates. Everyone had moved over to either using a Meta headset, or they were, you know, potentially considering the PlayStation VR 2 or something else from a different manufacturer, maybe something from HTC. But there was a lot of Valve didn't really have a solution in terms of a modern solution. They didn't have inside-out tracking with cameras. They didn't have any of that stuff. You had to buy a very costly system with LiDAR beacons that you put around your room. You had to have a dedicated space for it. And, you know, it didn't do anything like pass-through because it didn't have cameras. Now you've got, granted, it's only monochrome here, which, again, I think is another way that they're bringing the price down. There's no color cameras on it. It only does monochrome pass-through on, like, the Quest 3 Pro. But there's a lot here, I think, and I think it is going to prove to be a popular device for people who are already interested in VR. But I don't think this is a way that they draw people into thinking, "Oh yeah, I'll try VR." I think if you think VR is interesting, you'll get one because you're already into VR. But if you like maybe dabble with it and you play Beat Saber, you thought it was cool, but you can't see yourself playing it every single day, you're probably not going to invest in it. And I think that's fine.
Yeah, and I guess ultimately I think you're right about that, and I think ultimately it comes back to that same question of like, what is the metric for success for them here? If they're happy to have the most successful device in a niche, then yeah, like great, more power to them. I do think the biggest question about the kind of sense of investing in new VR devices or like still kind of wanting to be in this ecosystem 10 years in is for me the question of like whether or not VR development is still viable. And I don't think it is. So that, I guess, is another factor here. It's like, are you willing to invest in a arguably, depending on how much it costs, expensive device with a limited number of applications and no real promise of killer software on the horizon? And like I think that that's a real uphill battle for this device as like a mass
Unless you
consumer
just want
device. But
unless you just want, say, a 60-inch screen right in front of your face, and you want to have something that you can
Yeah.
play games on, and
Yeah.
then that is a real compelling use case, I think, for a lot of people.
especially if you're right about the price. If it is like $400 or something like that, then it's like, yeah, that's, you know, that's what you'd spend on a pair of those dopey glasses that you can get.
Yeah,
And this
is wireless and doesn't have to like plug into anything, because you just use the dongle. You plug it into your Steam machine or to your Steam Deck, and it just streams.
and it's
to
real
it.
high quality screens. So it's like, so those are all those are all things that I'm like, hell, I'm even sitting here like, I could probably use this thing. I could use this on a plane. That would be really cool, right? I could use this way. I think it is a very attractive device for what it is, but I think what it is not a particularly attractive device in 2025. And that's, I guess, ultimately, I will be so happy to be proven wrong on that. But I think of all of these, this is the one that I think has the smallest amount of overall potential to impact the market for my money.
I agree, 100% agree with that, and it's unfortunate because there's so much cool stuff in here. Like the foveated streaming is incredible. Like this was something that was introduced by PlayStation. They did foveated rendering. They weren't the first to do it, but they kind of popularized it and made it mainstream, where it will track your eye and what you're looking at will be rendered in higher detail. But they now do this via streaming as well as just rendering on device, and because obviously it's coming wirelessly, it means they've got like 7 milliseconds to track where your eye is, send it back to the PC, render that section in high resolution, and stream it back to the stream frame. It's like insane that you can do that like so quickly, and like then that enables you to make that aspect of the 4K. Well, the stuff on your periphery that your eye's not focusing on is in low resolution, and you can never tell because your eye is just always looking around and having a look, and what you're looking at is in high resolution at any given time.
I'll tell you what, I hope that people continue to invest in making better consumer VR technology. I've said this on this podcast before. I really feel like the future of this technology in like a really interesting capacity is going to be in arcades. Like I would really love to get to a point where VR arcades are more, they're pretty prevalent already. I wish they were more exciting. You know, I think if there were more like, wow, this is you could only do this in VR, and you didn't have to have a $1,000+ device and a whole room dedicated to using it.
That's the thing, right?
You know?
I think room scale VR is more interesting than stuff where I'm just sat in the same spot. Like any of the experiences I've had where I can walk around a room and I can pick things up and interact with it. You know, Half-Life Alyx is like you pick up a grenade in your hand and you're like gripping it like you are with an index, and then when you let your fingers go, you throw the grenade. That stuff is so fucking cool. But it's when, you know, you get taken out of it because you bump into your desk or you bump into your coffee table because you don't actually have a dedicated space in your house, because no one really does unless you're a millionaire, or a room for VR.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like there's a lot of situations with those kinds of experiences where I am actually immersed, and then it's like, oh, the immersion's broken because of something like that, or because like the game doesn't actually let me do a thing I feel like I should be able to do. And those little things I think really do like separate the current state of VR from the idealized version of it. And I think having like an arcade where it's like a really controlled environment, and like there's a technician that can make sure all the stuff is calibrated correctly and all that stuff, like those are also things that I feel like are part of the problem. Is like in a world where you only have, like, let's say you're an adult with a job, right? Which is probably almost every person that owns a VR headset because they're so expensive. How much time do you have in a week to play video games? Right?
Yeah, that's the thing. And I think that's why the deck's been so popular, because it's like, I only have a small amount of time and I can pick this up when I'm, you know, in between cooking dinner or looking after the kids or going to the gym or going to the store. You know, there's so much stuff that everyone's got to do in life.
So I'd say let's be generous, right? Like let's say that you're an adult with a job, you're unmarried, and you don't have kids, right? Okay. So that means, and we'll say you're single and you don't date and you don't have that many friends and you don't go outside. So, but like best case scenario, right? You're looking at like 4 or 5 hours a night you could be playing. Do you really want to spend a quarter of that troubleshooting and setting things up and playing with, whatever? Now let's say that you have kids, right? And you've got maybe 1 hour a night that you can play games, right? Which is, I think, still probably pretty generous, depending on how old your kids are and how much help you got, all that kind of stuff. It's like, that could be your whole time. Could just be troubleshooting, trying to make sure that the room scaling is working properly, right? Or that, like, there's like, oh, one of my two screens is like the wrong distance from my face, and I need to, it's like there's all these little things that I think get in the way of it being the kind of experience that you need for it to like compete for people's time. Because it's not just competing with other video games, it's competing with literally any other way you could spend your time. And that I think has always been the struggle with VR as like a mass market consumer device. But to your point, that's not what Valve's trying to achieve here, and they don't need to achieve that to be successful, right? Like, they need to make the best version of this device for the enthusiasts that are out there, and if you can evangelize it to new people, great. But if not, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being the best at a thing that there is a market for, whether or not it's a small market or whatever. But I guess the question is, like, how much R&D have they spent on it over the last several years? Do they have other plans to sell the technology to other people or anything like that?
I think Gabe's willing to just suck it up and be like, well, you win some, you lose some, because he did that with the Steam Machine originally, and then that led to something else, and now and that led to Proton becoming a thing, which has now come back full circle, and Proton runs on the Steam frame, so it can play games that were originally designed for the Meta Quest.
And to your point, maybe this is just them continuing to invest in the technology because they believe that long term it's going to bear fruit and that it is going to be a way that we play. And in the same way that the Steam Machine was a failed experiment 10 years ago, that seems to be coming back around now for a better successful at bat. Hopefully this will be that, but if it's not, maybe this is just the next step on that, and another 10 years from now VR technology will finally be where we want it to be, and they'll be laughing all the way to the bank.
Any closing thoughts, Pete, before we wrap up?
I really, really want this thing. I really, really want the Steam Machine to come out and be like, oh, this is an easy day one purchase. There's whatever caveats or whatever like issues that it might have or what have you are negligible versus the value that it's providing versus the excitement around it and all the cool things you can do with it. I'm really just hoping for a repeat performance of what we got with the Steam Deck, where it's like it immediately demonstrates its values and quiets the non-believers,
Yeah, I agree. I think if it comes out, it's the right price. I think I flog my Xbox at that point. There's no real reason to keep that around if this can play all of the games that I would have been playing on Xbox anyway, because they're released day and date on PC. They come out. The Steam sales are incredible. I've already got a huge library there, thanks to in no part to the Steam Deck. I think that's the device for me. But even if that proves that it's too expensive, it's not for me. I'm still over the moon about the Steam controller. I'm still going to be picking one of those up and using that with my deck in docked mode. So I think on the whole, this has been an incredible announcement. It was a real surprise for me to see all three of the devices announced at any one time. But I agree with you. The Steam frame's not for me. I tried VR. I play it every now and again, but I just don't have the space for it. I've smashed a glass playing Beat Saber, and I don't think my partner's going to allow me to have anything else. It was like it went straight across the room, and I was like, oops, my coffee table's there. I didn't realize that was still in the way. So
yeah, honestly, like I feel like if I did buy it, I would be the asshole that buys it and never plays VR on it. And I'm just like, oh yeah, I just use it in my backyard because I want to play video games outside. Or like whenever I travel, I go on the plane and I bring my fucking extremely off-putting headset so that nobody talks to me. Everyone's just like, look at this freak.
I don't blame you, to be honest. I mean, yeah, it's a good use case. Like we've all looked at those glasses and thought this would be great, but it's like the $300. I'm not going to spend that for.
They're admittedly pretty cool. But the problem with those too is like getting them on in such a way where it's like you're not being distracted by things in your peripheral and that everything lines up the way you want. It's not ideal. This though, it's goggles, right? Like it is more controlled. This I could see being a way better version of that. So if interested in that and you got the expendable income, that's where I think it's potentially interesting.
Yeah, 100%.
What I need is a fourth way to get into the Steam ecosystem, Steve.
They'll figure something out, I'm sure. But thank you all so much for tuning in for another episode of the Steam Deck Podcast, with a very special thank you to our Patreon producers for the month of November. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valens, Gabriel Hasmar, aka Sobi, Steve Stompy, Susan Still Likes Cats and Also Boobies, Voodoo Vic, That One Kid Nick, Tyler Dude, and Wackahula. And remember, let us know down in the comments what you think about all of these announcements. Are you going to be picking up a Steam machine, Steam controller? Is the Steam frame for you? Are you that single, childless, only stays at home person that Pete was talking about?
I hope there's somebody who's like, you couldn't be more wrong. I am that person, and I'm gonna buy 2 of them. It's like, yo, more power to you, my friend. I hope so.
But yeah, let us know in the comments, or head over to our website, flipscreen.games, where you can find us everywhere we're on the web, including Discord. Come over, keep the conversation flowing over there. And if you're watching on YouTube, please remember to give this episode a like, share it with a friend, and click the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And if you're an audio listener, please take a second to leave us a review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us get the show circulated. For the crew, I've been Steve, Max was here somewhere, and that's been Pete. And we'll see you next week.